Everyone, my name's Chad. This is part 2 of the step-by-step guide for CloudOffice. This is specific to Azure deployments. It assumes you already have an Azure account and that you followed along in part 1 where we installed things like Terraform through Windows Subsystem Linux. I'm at the GitHub page and I have PowerShell open. Let's go to the Azure specific guide and then scroll down to the Azure specific instructions. So I've got to open PowerShell start Windows Subsystem Linux, I'll do that. And then change to my home directory, I'll do that as well. Copy the AZ CLI instructions, paste it in with a right click, and then my sudo password is needed, and that's the password we set in the previous video, the first step-by-step guide. We'll wait for this to finish, I'll be back when it's done. Okay, that was pretty quick. The Azure CLI has been installed. Next, we'll run AZ login to authenticate, connect our AZ CLI tool with our AZ account. Give it a moment, we'll get a pop-up in our browser. And then we'll need to sign in. I'll sign into mine now, and I'll be back. CD to the Azure subdirectory. I've already done that while the video was paused. And I've also checked to see what my username is, and I ran the who am I command. You'll need that as well. So CD to this directory in Windows Subsystem Linux. You can also note your username in Windows Subsystem Linux because you'll need that. We're going to go to the same directory in Windows File Explorer. I've copied the address, pasted it into the address bar, and then replace Chad with your Windows Subsystem Linux username. Mine happens to be Chad. I'll hit enter. And we're now in the Azure subdirectory in Windows Subsystem Linux and in Windows File Explorer. We're going to edit this file, az.tfrs. I've already opened it, and it knows to open in Notepad. If this is the first time for you, it's going to ask you which application. Choose Notepad, that's fine. Double click to open. And we've got some variables that we need to edit. I'm going to scroll down. There is a variables specific section. The very first one is admin password. This is the password you use to log into the Nextcloud Web UI. This is probably the most important one. Set it to something unique and strong. For this tutorial, I'll just change it to change me 1A. There's also the DB password and OO or only office password. You won't necessarily need to remember these, though it's important to write these down. Maybe make a copy of this entire file, save it somewhere safe. The DB password and the only office password, that's what Nextcloud, the application, uses to talk to the database and to only office. Again, make them unique and secure. For the tutorial, I'll make them something simple. We also need our SSH key. This is the public key we use to access the instance via SSH if we were to ever need to. We created an SSH key pair in a previous step in the previous video, and you can get the public key with that command. To copy from PowerShell, highlight and then right click. And then in between the quotes, I will get rid of the old value and paste in the key. Management CIDR. This is the IP range that's granted Web UI access and SSH access to the instance. You could set this to your home IP address and with a /32 suffix. /32 means a single IP. That means only your home will have access to and only office, only from your home internet service provider. If you were on the go, you wouldn't be able to access it. That's the most secure. You could certainly do it that way. If you plan on using this remotely, or if you have a ISP that changes IP addresses often, you've got a dynamic IP address from your internet service provider and it changes. My suggestion, what I plan to do, is set this to 0.0.0.0/0, and that opens access worldwide, so no matter where you are. Sure, that does expose your services, keep that in mind, it does expose them to the internet, but you would need either the admin password, this password here, or the private SSH key for this key pair to access via SSH. So your instance is still secure. Just keep that in mind. I'm going to set mine to worldwide access /0. /0 means the opposite of /32, it's all IP addresses. And that is all of the common settings. Those are everything we must set. There are some more variables and they're worth taking a look at. The very next one is the region in Azure will deploy in. And you can get a list of the regions. There's a command here, I'll copy this. paste it into PowerShell. And we get a list of regions. And you can see if I scroll back to the left here, I'm in region East space US, and then there's a zone. Those are like sub-regions. And I chose zone 1. So East US, zone 1 is what I chose. That would be East US. And then I chose, the zones aren't listed here, but you can figure out that there's at least one zone per region. So you choose your region, the one that's closest to you, and then pick a zone. I don't know if there's more than one zone per every region, but maybe do some research, figure out which one works best for you. There's also the version of the image. This is the Ubuntu version that we're deploying. This is the official version from Canonical. Canonical publishes and maintains Ubuntu. You can get the latest version. You'll want to set the location. So if I look here in this secondary column, you can see that East US is East US, no spaces, all lowercase. I'm going to change this command to match that. East US. I'm going to grab this command, paste it in. Oops, I'm going to try that one more time. Grab the command, copy, paste. We're going to get the latest version of Ubuntu. There it is. I'll highlight, right click to copy, and then paste it. And you can see this version is 2020 October, and then there's a day there. I'm going to replace it with 2021 January, and it looks like 19. All right, the free tier, so you can change the size of the instance. Again, 1 gig is the absolute minimum. It's not going to be fast. It will work fine, and you can certainly store your files, but if you're expecting high performance, this virtual machine size in Azure is about as low as it gets. It's about as small as you can get it. It's also the free tier offer that Azure currently has. So they give, I think it's 12 months, don't quote me on this because it certainly could change, but they give 12 months of this size virtual machine and this size disk, 64 gigs. So that's what I've got set as the default. Again, do some research on which size you want. I suggest a minimum of 1 gig of RAM. I really suggest at least 2 gigs. And you'll see varying sizing recommendations online. I think you could probably get away with 1 gig. It's just going to be extremely slow in some cases. But if all you need is to store files somewhere and money is a concern, or you've got a tight budget, then you could probably get away with this just fine. But keep that in mind, you're right on the edge of usability. Next, we've got some additional variables like labeling. This is a prefix you can label your service with. If you already have resources in Azure, you might want to take a look at some additional settings. I don't need to change anything here. I'm going to keep it all. And then the very uncommon stuff, you probably don't need to touch that as well. That's if you're planning on deploying additional services on the virtual machine that we deploy. And I don't. I plan to have this machine only be dedicated to Nextcloud. All right, everything's done. I'm going to save this file, close it out, and scroll back up to the instructions. We've edited the file and saved it in Notepad. We want to make sure we're in that directory. I'm going to copy this, paste it in, and then we're going to tell Terraform to initialize. This tells Terraform to download Azure-specific code and any other additional code that it needs. It should be pretty quick. We'll give that just a second. And then I'm going to copy this as well. This is the real magic of Terraform. This is Terraform Apply, where we reference our variables file that we just customize. This will take the code that's included with CloudOffice, this project, plus your customized variables, and the Azure account that you logged in with via the AZ CLI, and deploy your resources in Azure. Before it does that, it will give us a plan. It'll tell us what it's planning to create, and we can review that and then approve or deny based on what we see. Okay, that was pretty quick. I'm going to scroll up just a bit here, and you can see there's a plan, 38 to add, 0 to change, 0 to destroy, and we can see a number of different resources that Terraform plans to create in Azure. Things like the virtual network, an identity for user access, a subnet, a storage container for data. I'm going to type in yes, I want it to deploy the resources. Terraform will begin talking with Azure to build out all of the resources in the order that it is necessary. We'll give that some time. It can take a little bit. Things like encryption need to be set up. Those are not instantaneous. Things like creating the instance from the official Ubuntu image. Give it just a bit. I've seen it take a few minutes. I've seen it take many minutes. I don't think it'll take more than 10 or 15. I'll be back when it's done. Just have a little bit of patience and we'll let it do its thing. It's entirely dependent on how quickly Azure can deploy these services in the region you chose. Terraform has completed. We get an output at the very end, and all of the resources have been created. It's important to note, though, that this is Terraform plus Ansible that deploys our services. If I go back to the instructions on the front page of the project, you'll see here in this little, what is that, a hexagon, Terraform plus Ansible automation. Terraform sets up the cloud resources, things like the network, the firewall rules, encryption, the instance, the storage bucket, etc. And then Ansible will configure the instance, including things like the Docker containers, the Nextcloud container, the database, the secure web proxy, only Office, etc. So they kind of work in sync. And once Terraform is done and it's spawned the instance, the Ansible will automatically spawn and begin installing the services. We can watch that happen. So if I go back to Azure and scroll down to after Terraform apply, note the outputs. That's this section. I do suggest saving this. Maybe make a highlight it, copy it, put it in Notepad or something, save it in your notes, just so you have it. If you ever need it again, you can run Terraform output and it will show you the exact same output. So we want to wait for the virtual machine to become ready. Ansible will set up the services for us. That's what I was just talking about there with the diagram. If you want to watch Ansible set up the services on the virtual machine, we can SSH to the instance and see the output. And if I scroll up here, we can get the SSH command, copy that, highlight and right click, and then paste with a right click as well. First time we connect, are you sure you want to connect? Yes. And we are connected, and then we can tail the log file. This is the log file for CloudOffice. I'll hit enter. And we can see things are happening. It's not done yet. It will take a little bit of time. If that file does not exist yet, it's because Ansible is still being installed. Even before Ansible runs, we have to install Ansible on the machine. That is automatic, but it just takes a few minutes. So just be patient, give it some time. Okay, Ansible is done. We get a play recap at the very end of the log file, and the most important bit is failed equals 0. We can also see that 37 things are okay, changes 10, but most important, failed to 0. I'm going to Control-C to get out of the tail of the log file. I'm going to exit the instance. I'm going to run Terraform output again and get our output. We can look at some of the other bits. The web UI, I'm going to go there first, open a new tab. Your connection isn't private, that's okay. That's because we're using self-signed certificates. We don't have any domain names. So we're just using the IP address to connect directly, and there is a certificate, but our machine, my Windows machine here, doesn't know if it should trust it or not. I'm going to say yes, it should. That's fine. Continue. The connection is still encrypted. And then we get, let me turn off my extension for Dark Reader. I'm going to log in with NCAdmin. That's the username. It doesn't get changed. And then the password I set was changeme1a. And I can log into the instance. Let me make this full screen. Okay, we're in Nextcloud. You can make changes to your heart's content. Just to go over a couple of the features, files top left. And I want to show cloud storage. This is Azure storage. It's a similar, if you're familiar with AWS, it's like AWS S3. It's infinitely scalable storage. You can put as many files in there as you want. If you don't put things in that directory, they will be part of the hard drive storage that comes with your instance. By default, that's 64 gigs. There's also Talk, which is an extension here at the top. Talk is like web conferencing. So you could, if you wanted to set up a private video conference or chat with someone else, you can use that. You can set up a conversation, call it test, allow guests to join via link, password protected, test as well, add participants, myself, create a conversation. I could use my webcam and have a video conference through my own machine hosted by me in the Azure cloud. All right, and there you go. You can see start call at the top right. We also have OnlyOffice, right? And that's integrated directly with Nextcloud. So if I hit plus and create a document, we'll call it test, you'll see it opens a new tab and we get the OnlyOffice service. And we can edit the document as we desire. So test ABC 1 2 3. We've got spell check. We've got sharing. But when it's done, we can close it out, go back to files. Files automatically saved, and it is in Nextcloud. And there it is. That about wraps it up for the application. You can customize it to your heart's content. Though I will note, if you want to maintain it and run sudo docker ps, you'll see there are several containers here. We've got CloudOffice, OnlyOffice, Storage Gateway, Web Proxy, Nextcloud, and the database. All of these containers occasionally will get updates from their upstream resources. They are all first-party containers. For example, the OnlyOffice container is the official OnlyOffice Docker container. The Storage Gateway is by Mini.io. They provide that. Web Proxy is the official Apache. Nextcloud is the official Nextcloud. And the database is provided by linuxserver.io, which is third-party, but I would consider first-party, considering their expertise and popularity. With that said, if I exit back out and I run Terraform output again, we can get the instructions on how to update those containers. And there it is, it starts here. Update container / Ansible rerun instructions. We SSH to the instance, copy that with a right click, paste it in, back into the instance via SSH, scroll back up. And we can run sudo docker remove, copy, paste. This will bring the services down. All the containers are down. Containers have been removed. And then finally, you would run this command, which will start up the service to reinstall the containers using the latest versions. And you can, you can systemctl status that service to get the output. And let me make it a little bit bigger. And we can see that it's running right now. You could check in occasionally to see how it's doing. You could also run sudo docker ps to determine which containers are up and running. None of them are yet. Give it a couple minutes and you'll see those containers spawn back. Your services will be back up and running. And that about wraps it up. The one last thing I will show, and let me exit out of the instance, is Terraform destroy. So we ran Terraform apply. We can run Terraform destroy -var file equals ASIA TFVARs. And just like Terraform applied all the services, we can remove them with Terraform, and I can type in yes, and Terraform will destroy all of the resources for me. I'm going to do that. The tutorial is over. With that said, if you run into any problems, any issues, if you have ideas on how to make this project better, you can reach me at Discord. There's a link to the Discord channel in the description of this video. There's a link on the GitHub page. All feedback is welcome. Everyone's welcome. If you want to do a troubleshooting session, reach out to me. We can work through it. There's a small but growing community on there as well. They may be able to help you too. Otherwise, GitHub issues are fine. You can also leave a comment on YouTube. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a great day.